A very good afternoon to each and every one of you, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Professor Hashim Kamali has already introduced the topic. I don't have to add very much to it, except to underscore his words that there is an air of expectation, and especially after the Bush years, the world, it's not only the Muslim world, even Americans perhaps look forward to change, and change was the word upon which Obama came in. And the question is, of course, whether Obama is more rhetoric or action. And to address this topic, we have, or are supposed to have, in fact, 4 very distinguished speakers. At the moment, we have 3. And I think I should introduce them very slightly because, well, I enjoy it. First is my very, very good friend, Tan Sri Razali Ismail. His background is all with you, so I don't have to go into his background there, except to mention that he was President of the United Nations General Assembly. He has done a lot for Malaysia, for the United Nations, and right now he is Pro-Chancellor of the University Science in Malaysia. But what I would like to add is that he is one of the reasons, one of the persons responsible for all the, well, for some of the criticism that Wisma Putra, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, is getting nowadays, fairly or unfairly. They are getting all this criticism because he set such high standards. He and his colleagues set such high standards when they were in Wisma Putra. I think many of us remember very well Tun Ghazali Shafi. We also know Tan Sri Zain Azrai. This is Tan Sri Razali Ismail, Tan Sri Zainal Abidin Sulong. They were all luminaries, and we have one of them in our midst today, and I'm very privileged, in fact, to be with him on this panel. We also have Professor Tan Sri Koo Kay Kim, if he turns up, and I do hope he will. Something must have happened, but we look forward to him, for him to join us. He got his master's, his bachelor, master's and PhD from the University of Malaya. His doctoral thesis was on the beginnings of political extremism in Malaya, and if you will note, the period is 1915 to 1935, so it's nothing new, I suppose. Among other things, he's of course a very, very distinguished academician. He was also a sports person, and he won an award in 2003, the Golden Pen Award by the Sports Writers Association of Malaysia. This is a less known aspect of him, and that is why I mention it this afternoon. And then we have Professor Datuk Paduka Muhammad bin Abu Bakar, again someone we all know very well, and perhaps in this company especially. He was until recently Dean of the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences of University of Malaya. He is now a lecturer in the Department of International and Strategic Studies. He was previously Tun Abdul Razak Chairholder with the Center for International Studies, Ohio. I don't think I need to read much more, it's all in the things before you. Then we have Mr. Nasser Abbasi. His background is also with you. He is the Counselor for Commercial Affairs in the Embassy of the United States of America. He has served in various places, and in US commercial service around the world. He has an MBA in International Business from the American Graduate School of International Management, and he got his bachelor's degree in management from Eckerd College, St. Petersburg, Florida, not Russia. So without further ado, it is my great pleasure to invite Tan Sri Razali Ismail to address us. Tan Sri.
Good afternoon, Salam Sejahtera. It's a bit early days to start thinking of, to diagnose what, to break down what Obama has said and try to find reasons for this and that. of course, there is huge expectation. This guy has gone to Cairo deliberately to make a speech to the Muslim world. And I'm sure the people that counseled him worked out clearly what would be the derivatives, the benefits of doing it in Cairo instead of Ankara or Kuala Lumpur or Indonesia, but he did it in Cairo. So there must be good reasons for that. And he wanted to make it a very important speech. And in my mind, in all sense, in many sense, it was a very important speech. It was impressive. The sweep that the speech covered was pretty impressive. And it was meant to be. It was meant to make a point with the Muslim groups, not just Muslim government, but Muslim groups, Muslim intelligentsia, different groups of people, and the governments. Trying to do something about the serious disaffection, some people would say disillusionment, anger, whatever, between the Americans, the United States, and the Muslim world. I think he was trying to do this. I accept it as that. That's how I read it. Taking into account, of course, the extremities and the excessiveness and, to me, the irrationality of the Bush era, as we all know. So he was trying to do something about that. And that he was willing to go a long way to repair relations. In that context, for those people who have been lingering or been very angry about the fact that the Muslim world has been marginalized, have not had a chance to be able to weigh its influence in many aspects of world issues, this can be seen as a manner of looking for entry points, what I would call entry points, to be involved and to make matters improve or to get things done. And for us and for the rest of the world, you don't have to be a Muslim about this. The Middle East, the Palestinian-Israeli issue must be but the most complicated and the most dangerous issue we have in this world. So if anything can be done to bring normalization of relations between Israel and Palestine and the greater Arab area, this may have a wonderful effect on the rest of issues dealing with political security. So I think the Obama speech went in that direction to try to see whether something like this can be done. Because the moment he says this, and it's curious to see that he didn't, in my mind, it struck me that he was not really speaking so much as, he was not speaking just as President of the United States. Also speaking as somebody else, like one little article I wrote, I call him the Piper. If you know that poem, the Piper Hamlin, you would know that he played on his flute and everybody followed him. And then, of course, it ended on all of them died. But we're not saying that, but I call him the Piper because he's very evocative. He gets people to really listen to him. So, and this is why I think he particularly directs his appeal also to the non-governmental sector, as it were, to lots of people. And there must be a reason why he's doing it. I do not believe it is just rhetoric. It's a lot more than that. This guy really wants to do something. Whether he will be able to do it is a different story. I believe that by coming out so clearly and so completely different, quite unprecedented from the previous president, particularly completely different from President Bush in the Bush era, he's exposing himself to enormous risk within the United States itself. I mean, everybody knows how strong are the conservative elements, how strong are the people that believe that the Americans should be the #1 power in every sense of the word. So anything that goes in the direction of trying to fuss over that area or to man fences to appeal in the way he has done would not be supported by a lot of people, by many people in the United States. So why does he do it? I don't know. I mean, this must be in his calculation. Has he got the support of the officials in the State Department and other organs of the government? Maybe Mr. Abbasi can tell us. But it is an enormous risk to him. And if he does not deliver, if we are not going in a certain direction, then obviously the people who have got very good feeling for him, the Muslims and others, would then begin to be cynical and would drop the whole idea. So, and Mr. Obama will be just guilty of tilting windmills, not being serious, trying to endear himself to a situation, but not being able to have the delivery capacity. So there are attendant risks involved here, and I think Mr. Obama quite understands this, and I think Mr. Obama needs help. Whatever he wants to do will not be able to be done if he doesn't get the constructive support or the constructive actions, not necessarily support, but constructive actions of the Muslim world as such. I think it's not just the Muslim government, but also the intelligentsia, group discussions, universities, whatever. There must be the Muslims themselves must debate how they can make use of this opportunity to do something. I think that what it will not help would be another round of US bashing. I mean, this country, Malaysia, our country, has also had its US bashing. It served the purpose at a certain time, but in some ways, that is passive. That's just all kind of politics. We're coming to a different attempt to try to reconstruct something. I think it is possible for us to be of help. If you talk about the important countries of the Muslim world, you talk about Cairo or Saudi Arabia, in the context of that kind of hard politics, these countries must come out to support the constructive efforts of what Mr. Obama wants to do in trying to solve the Middle East problem. And if you talk about the middle powers, Muslim countries, Malaysia, Indonesia has the potential to become more than a middle power, but Turkey, we should be counted to be doing something. What that will be, I really don't know, but obviously we have a good record of major economic and social accomplishments. We've done well, and it is possible to make the point that Muslim countries are not mired by their religion to the point that they're not able to deal with the various combinations of development, modernization, and all that. So I think when he mentioned Malaysia, Indonesia, or Malaysia and Gulf states, Dubai, I mean, it was supposed to mean something. I'm sure the officials like Mr. Abbasi must have worked on every word in that speech, that it is a signal to something. And it is possible for us to respond to this. We must now, in the realm of public diplomacy, I think it's not helpful to just go and bash the United States as we have done before. We must take into account that there is this man, Commander-in-Chief, who really wants to do something. Give him a chance to do it. And we ourselves should help. For Malaysia, I see Islamic banking. Prove to the world this is a necessary prerequisite of how to deal with international financial system. Prove to the world that. When I was in the ADB 2 weeks ago, they said, Malaysia, this is the word they said, Malaysia has the intellectual capacity to bring Islamic banking to the international financial system. Well, let's do it. I don't know how to do it. But there must be a way of doing this. And then Malaysia is multiracial. It is able to deal with the various cultures, various sharpness of races. We continue to be quite polarized. Races have, in the last so many years, not just here, everywhere, become quite polarized. But Malaysia is still able to balance this. And it's all said and done, it is still moving in the right direction. So this is an example of what we could explain to the rest of the world, or to Mr. Obama. This is the way Muslim communities can respond to other communities and can work on the major modern issues and all that. I think the fact that we are democratic in terms of ethos should be something that we can discuss with the United States. How similar examples or similar things can happen for other countries. There are much too few, unfortunately, Muslim countries that are really democratic, that are democratic like us. And while Cairo can deal with the high politics of power in trying to influence Israel and all that, in terms of appealing to societies, Muslim societies, it's not working out, because you can see the president is very autocratic, authoritarian. I mean, I've been to Cairo, I see a lot of money wasted, and it's not a good example. Saudi Arabia, I mean, it's still agonizing about whether to go forward or continue to meditate or whatever. You know, it's so distressing that the countries that can really make the difference are not in the position to do that much. But Mr. Obama needs these countries, these major Islamic countries, and they will need he will need the middle Muslim countries, middle power Muslim countries, that's us. It's time that we do this, and I think if we can come up with the right equations to help this process, it will not happen in the United States, but we have to repair many of the serious problems in the world. I'm intrigued by Mr. Obama. I don't know how far he will fare, but I think Malaysia should take up this possibility of doing something in this context. Malaysia has drifted in the last so many years from a position of influence to be maybe number 30, number 40 and all that. We are not in the group of 22. We're not in this, we're not in that. We have to go back to helping constructively to solve world problems. It's just not enough to have good relations within the neighbors of the region, but we must participate. It's not entirely us, but we must participate in helping constructively to bring about solutions, to find solutions on world issues that have bedeviled us for a long, long time. That's about it, and I will take questions and answers later. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tan Sri. I have to, it's unfortunate that Professor Tan Sri Koo Kay Kim is unable to join us this afternoon because he's unwell. He sends his apologies, and so do we, the organizers, and myself on behalf of the organizers. So may I now invite Professor Datuk Paduka Muhammad bin Abu Bakar to make his presentation. Prof. Can I use this?
Okay. Assalamualaikum and selamat tengah hari. Good afternoon, everybody. Tan Sri Pengurusi, fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I shall continue from where Tan Sri Razali has left, and will try to augment some of his findings, so to speak, in regards to Obama's speech and Obama's overtures in regards to the Muslim world as a whole. But at the same time, I might be deviating a bit by giving a slightly different rendering of the recent event. Firstly, one must bear in mind that this euphoria surrounding the election of Obama to the American presidency is far from subsiding. for two special reasons as far as the Muslim world is concerned. Firstly, of course, there is this so-called Islamic connection of him, his Kenyan parentage, his association with Indonesia, and also his being black, which all in all have given him another dimension as the American president. And Muslims all over the world, especially those who are Kenyans, probably, who are Indonesians, who tend to be naive or gullible, will be easily overtaken by this. So much so that, on the good side, they tend to think positively about the future. Now that a man of mixed parentage, of Kenyan descent, of Islamic connection, and so on, is at the hands in the United States. So that is one point that needs to be spelled out. I think everybody will agree with me. And if at all Obama were to visit Indonesia, you can see the kind of reception he'll be given by the layman, for the simple reason that he used to be in Indonesia. He used to study or been following some courses at some of the pesantren in Indonesia. That is one thing. So part of the euphoria has to do with that. Secondly, of course, as mentioned by Tan Sri Razali, there has been this series of development associated with Obama in the context of Muslim world when he has given a couple of major speeches. One, firstly, in Turkey, and then secondly, in Cairo, in Egypt. On both the occasion, he tried to engage the Muslim world by invoking the so-called similarities in terms of ideas and ideals of the Muslim people and the West, hoping to concord or create a kind of a basis for future relationship, as opposed to the Bush era when it was more confrontational in nature. It's very crucial. In the case of his Turkish trips, he even tried to show the way for the new America when it comes to combating terrorism. When it came to telling the people in Turkey, he even invoked the presence of the 7 million Muslims in the United States of America. There is this burgeoning American population of Muslim faith, to the extent that he did say at one stage that Islam is part of the United States. That is, of course, quite revolutionary for someone like him, for an American president to have said all that. In Cairo, likewise, he also tried to engage the Muslims by talking along the same line, by invoking the common ideas and common ideas that are shared, that needs to be shared, and for the kind of cooperations that should be created in terms of Muslim and American relationships so far. At the same time, on both the occasion, he also tried to harp on the Palestinian crisis, giving hope to some that now, for the first time, probably in a more practical way, America will solve the Palestinian crisis, while at the same time talking about the coalition of allies in combating terrorism, which will cut ties with the more liberal, more pro-Western Muslim leaders of Turkey, of Egypt, and so on and so forth. So, with this kind of rhetoric, if you can call it that way, or overtures emanating from Obama, surely it is very much a deviation from the original stance adopted by Bush, who was very confrontational. Bush, in his State of the Nation address at one time, spoke about the possibility of Muslims ganging up to create an empire stretching from Indonesia to Spain, probably, resurrecting the caliphate, etc., which was really anathema to the people of the West. And for some, as a result of September 11, they began to look into the fact that Islam, which used to be considered an alien and exotic religion, will make a comeback in this 20 years or 21st century, which is, of course, going to be a thorn in the flesh at the very least in Western civilization. And of course, there was September 11, which somehow galvanized some people in the United States, which to some extent has caused some people in the US to wage a holy war against the Muslim. So that was the kind of fear lurking in the United States as a result of September 11. Added to that was, of course, this view about the clash of civilization brought to bear by people like Samuel Huntington and so on and so forth. And there was an invasion of Iraq. There was the coalition of the willing against terrorism and Talibanism in Afghanistan and so on and so forth. That has at very least created a dent in the American image. And to undo that mistakes, of course, there must be some kind of a public relation exercise of a kind. So coincidentally, you have this man at the hands, Obama, with that credential that I have just mentioned, and with the kind of rhetoric that I have also mentioned in Turkey and whatnot. Of course, I was told the choice of place or places where he should be addressing all those subjects also have been deliberately discussed. Why Turkey? Why Egypt? Is it because Turkey and Egypt are very much in the center of the Muslim world? They have inherited Islamic culture and civilization. Was it because they could play a role by leveraging the conflict, by engaging the Palestinians, the Israelis, and so on and so forth? And of course, if you ask some people elsewhere, they say that the Muslim world is not necessarily the Middle East. That can be a footnote of a kind when some Indonesians will question that by saying that you have Indonesia being the most populous Muslim country in the world, and so on and so forth. But at the same time, in spite of this development associated with Obama, which has raised great hopes all around in the Muslim world, partly because of his personality, as I've just mentioned, and partly because of the kind of departure that he made in relations to Bush earlier Muslim policy, one also will have to look into the grievances of the Muslim as a whole. Whether the Muslim grievances are just associated with this kind of overtures only, or they are more immersed in the larger issue of the Palestinian crisis, for example. And it is pretty well known now that in spite of this attempt by Bush earlier on, by Obama recently to look into the Palestinian crisis, there has not been any concrete steps taken to enable the problem be solved. This is going to remain a problem for a long, long time to come. So the translation of that ideals of Obama's idea of cooperation will have to be seen in more concrete terms in the forms of the solution of the Palestinian crisis. That is very crucial. Why I say so is because it's not just the people at the helms, the Egyptian policymakers, the Turkish policymakers who would be overwhelmed by that consideration, but the general population, the populace. If democracy is going to be sold to the Arab world, to the Muslim world, and if the populace are still immersed in this consideration, like it or not, they will be affected by the Palestinian crisis. That is number one. Number two, of course, the invasion of Iraq might lapse in the memory of some people, but will be invoked by all sorts of people. The issue in Afghanistan, the death of the thousands of people associated with the various bombings, either it is US-led NATO or NATO on its own account, will necessarily become pervasive in any discussion within the democratic process in the Muslim world, even if democratization is meant to help them overcome some of the grievances and some of their problems. Well, assuming that Obama is going to go further than the rest, in view of his connection that I've just mentioned, of his parentage, of his lineage, of his Islamic background, so to speak, whether he could do on his own accord or whether he has the liberty to go ahead with those policies. I'm saying this all because he still has to be moving within certain paradigm. So long as there is no paradigmic shift of a kind in US foreign policy in regards to Israel, in regards to Afghanistan, and so on and so forth, you will have to work within a certain framework. You will be circumscribed by not just the foreign policy consideration of his predecessors, but also he will have to make do with the pronouncement, the policies, and the exhortation of the American electorate. If you talk about the Jewish lobby, the Israel lobby, as mentioned in one of the famous books recently titled The Israel Lobby, it's not going to be easy for him to really depart from the old stand or stand taken by his president. That is number one. Number two, some would say if it is going a bit too far, then he has to go against the Christian evangelicals, the Christian fundamentalists who in some way or another are highly sympathetic to the Israeli cause. So, well, foreign policy being very much an extension of domestic politics, for Obama to go out of the way against the grain of the thinking of the Christian evangelicals and so on and so on, will not be accepted by the American people. So that's what I'm trying to say. So long as he has to work within that paradigm, it's going to be very difficult. I'm not saying impossible for Obama to really provide a new context of solution, a new context for crisis management as far as US and the rest is concerned. But of course, we agree with many that not just the people in Indonesia, not just with the people in Egypt and elsewhere who are overtaken, overwhelmed by Obama's overtures, there are probably even people in the US. We have the 7 million Muslims, the many black Muslims, the many Hispanic, Catholic Hispanics who are converting to Islam. At one stage, there was a conversion to the tune of 40 to 70,000 of them embracing Islam in the United States. It is a burgeoning Islamic community right in the midst, within the bosoms of the American society. So, in that sense, it can be both a minus and a plus factor for Obama. It is a plus factor when he takes cognizance of this present. He tried to appease them by becoming less confrontational with the Muslim world, by engaging them in a more positive way. But if he fails to live to that standard, or he doesn't live to the requirements of these various people, not just outside the United States, but also within the American society, then he stands to lose both their constituencies. The world of the Muslim people, and also in the process, he might be even losing some of his supporters within the Israel lobby and the American conservative fundamentalist community. So, it's a gamble of a kind for Obama. So, the best bet is this. As Tan Sri put it, it is for others also to create a kind of a context of situation to enable him to feel at peace with this new development. And also to make the environment as supportive as possible, and more importantly, to make him really understand, if he wants to understand, the fact that the world of Islam is not just what was spelled by him in Turkey or in Egypt. That is just half of the story, I'm telling you. It's half of the story. If he were to just settle with those exhortations and try to translate all those ideas within the prescribed pronouncements of the Obama era as evident in Turkey and Egypt, then I can assure you he's not going to go far. So, the supportive environment that needs to be created, as Tan Sri put it, to make him see the real problem. And in this regard, to be able to see the real problem also means to engage Netanyahu, which is very adamant, very bellicose. In fact, before he became the prime minister, I remember listening to him talking over the US television about him wanting to go as confrontational as possible against Iran.
when right now even Obama himself is trying to appease Iran in his own way. So in other words, the upshot or the conclusion that can be made out of it all is that while this euphoria that has surrounded this election is well-based, is well-premised on some good grounds, it is in no way a guarantee that the US will necessarily come up with a new Islam or Muslim foreign policy vis-a-vis the Muslim world. And if at all he fails to live to that expectation, as I just mentioned, he stands to lose both the Muslim world as well as his own constituency. And by that I mean not just the Jewish and the Christian evangelicals of the United States, but also probably the Western world of Europe, elsewhere, who for a long time has been so galvanized around the United States leadership in terms of confronting terrorism, global terrorism, in terms of confronting the rest others who are not sharing their values, who are not sharing their ideas. So, ladies and gentlemen, while this is partly an extension of Tan Sri Razali's speech, it is also a kind of a warning, a cautious explanation of where we are going to be from where we are now. Thank you, Tan Sri.
Thank you. Thank you. It is my pleasure now to invite Mr. Nasser Abbasi, one of the 7 million Muslims in the United States, to address us. Please, Mr. Nasser.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Salamat Tanggahari. Professor Muhammad Hashim Kamali, Tan Sri Muhammad Jawar Hassan, Chairman and Chief Executive of ISIS, Professor Dato Paduka Abdul Bakr, Tan Sri Razali Ismail, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored to be here, invited to this event this afternoon, this forum, and sitting amongst the most distinguished panelists that have years more experience than I could ever have sitting at this table discussing a topic, the US and the Muslim world. Is this engagement or rhetoric? Rest assured, I did not prepare a 20-minute speech, so I will not sit here and read things to you for the next 20 minutes. I would much rather have an open discussion with you and take questions and see how I can answer some of your questions from my perspective. But I think I would like to point out a few things before I move on, and that is, Tan Sri, just so you know, as you asked in your presentation, the State Department does not take direction. I mean, the President does not take direction from the State Department. It's more the State Department takes direction from the President. So we implement the policies that the President puts out for us. I think I would also like to just mention that, as the President said himself, no single speech, no single meeting or forum can do away with the mistrust that we have built over the years. Over several years, I might add. However, I intend today to share with you what it's like to be a Muslim American and working in America. My name, as you heard, is Nasser Abbasi. And as I said, I'm the commercial counselor for, I'm the counselor for commercial affairs at the US Embassy in Malaysia. Yes, just like the person by the name of Barack Hussein Obama can be the President of the United States, so can a person named Nasser Abbasi be an American diplomat. I've worked in the US for the last 30 years, 12 or 15 of which in the US Foreign Service. I can assure you, this is the promise that brought my parents to the United States of America. What my parents raised me as a Muslim in the US, the traditions that they taught me the things that I grew up with in Islam, the things I know what Islam was growing up with my neighbors, with my friends, with my colleagues, with my fellow students in college and university in the US, was that we must, above all, show tolerance to others, to those that do not have the same belief as I did or my parents did. And if my mother chose to wear the hijab, it was her right, and it was not the right of somebody to tell my mother that she could not. So I think it's in that context that I say that I call myself a proud Muslim, because I grew up in that environment and we had the freedom. And that's why I call myself a proud American. As the president said in Cairo, and I quote, "I also know that Islam has always been part of the American story. The first nation to recognize my country was Morocco. In signing the Treaty of Tripoli in 1796, our second president, John Adams, wrote, 'The United States has in itself no character of enmity against the laws, religion, or tranquility of Muslims. And since our founding father, the American Muslims have enriched the United States. They have fought in our wars, they have served in our governments, they have stood up for civil rights, they have started businesses, and they have taught at our universities. They have excelled in our sports. They have won Nobel Prizes, built our tallest buildings, and lit the Olympic torch. And when the first Muslim American was recently elected to Congress, he took the oath of office using the same Quran that our founding father, Thomas Jefferson, kept in his library," end quote. So you can see that I was extremely pleased when the President of the United States stood on June 4th in front of the Muslim world and uttered these very words, "Assalamu alaikum." Ladies and gentlemen, if you think this is rhetoric, then I think we have something to discuss here. I believe this is the opportunity for all of us to stand up and take responsibility and listen to the President's call and understand that we're at a moment in history where if we stand still, we have the same opportunity that we've had for years and years of mistrust and disbelief amongst the Muslim world and the US. The President of the United States went on to say, and I quote, "I've come here to Cairo to seek a new beginning between the United States and the Muslims around the world. One based on mutual interest and mutual respect, and one based upon the truth that America and Islam are not exclusive and need not be in competition. Instead, they do overlap and share common principles, principles of justice and progress, tolerance and dignity of all human beings," end quote. Again, ladies and gentlemen, let me just highlight that growing up in the US as a Muslim, I can assure you, and working for the US government for the last 15 years, we may have disagreements, we may have we may have different opinions, we may call the previous administration against Islam, but I can assure you, sitting here in this seat as a representative of the US government, as an American, as a Muslim American, the war is not against Islam. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I would be happy to open it up and take questions and have a discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Nasir. We have had 3 very excellent presentations giving overlapping as well as different perspectives of the topic before us, which is how much of this is real and how much of this is rhetoric. And we are focusing the topic is the USA and the Muslim world, engagement or rhetoric, but this is centered around Obama, the new policies of Obama. I invite questions, comments from the floor. Please mention your name and the affiliation if possible, at least for record purposes, before you make your point. Please. Yes, please.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm Kareem Crow from here at IAIS. I want to thank all the presenters. And my question revolves around the role of the two states of Iraq and Iran, both from the Muslim perspective and from the American perspective.
Can you please closer to the mic? Yes,
Yeah.
please.
In Lebanon, we say, I love you, but I love myself more. And we hope that people will work in their best self-interest. One of the complaints that Muslims have had about America is that they seem to love Israel more than they love themselves. Is this going to change, or is it a constraint that Obama cannot overcome, the incestuous relationship with Israel that America has maintained for decades? This is really a problem for America as much as for the Middle East. Secondly, the old policy of dual containment, where Iraq and Iran were blank holes on the map, the two largest and most important nations in the Middle East. And by the way, they both have a Shiite majority. If you look ahead a couple of decades, if you have Iraq run by a Shiite majority and Iran dominated by a Shiite revolutionary regime, what does that mean for the Americans in terms of their policy towards Islam? Is the rapprochement with the Sunni crescent, or the arc of Sunni nations, conservative, pro-Western regimes, Arabia, Jordan, Egypt, Turkey, and is it aimed against another half of the Muslim world? These are questions which will arise in the future, and I'd like some of the participants to address this. And I thank Nasir for his personal background. It's always nice to know about American Muslims. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I ask members of the panel to respond? Anyone on this side? No? Yes, if you wish. Or, yeah, well, it was a comment and a question. It merits a response. Yeah.
Well, the reference to the Israel lobby in particular earlier on that I made also shows that how strong these groups has been in the formulation of U.S. foreign policy. In fact, there are Americans who are already questioning this approach simply because in the long run it's going to undermine even American strategic interests in the Middle East. But because this group remains powerful, in spite of all the criticism, it continues to define the outlook of the various American presidents. So much that the special relationship between the US and Israel remains with or without Obama, and so on. That is one. Secondly, in regards to the Shi'i revival, this is not, of course, spelled out in any of the speeches made by Obama recently. But underlining or underpinning some of the concern, of course, is the lurking fear that the revival, if translated into some kind of practices, either in the forms of nuclear proliferation led by Iran, will necessarily destabilize the US, overall speaking, and also some of the US allies in the Middle East. So you are partly right in the sense that there is this growing concern about Iran and of course about the Shi'i revival. But at the same time, unlike Bush, who earlier on mentioned in categorical terms about the revival, Obama simply let it off.
I'm not commenting on the comment made by the honorable gentleman. It's that my point about what I tried to say just now is that given one president of the United States is doing this, we should maximize any number of opportunities to do something, not for him, but within our own political context. I think, and I am not one of the people that would like to demonize Israel. I think there are good people in Israel, and I'm told that there are a lot of people who want democracy, who want to make peace with the Arabs and all that. And I take it prima facie, I believe them, until I disbelieve later. But at this moment, I think this is very important. We must appeal to the people who are a bit tired of the things that are going on in the Middle East. I mean, the leaders make war and the people are marginalized. If you want to know my philosophy, I'm on the side of people, ordinary people. I'm an egalitarian. It's sick and tired of all these wars that are going on. If there's a way of solving it, there's no point demonizing Israel. What's the point of that? I mean, in this country, it is more difficult to make a constructive suggestion about Israel than if you are in Arabia, somewhere in the Middle East. Because we are tied by some straitjacket that prevents us from really even thinking of anything positive about Israel. This business of Sunni Asia is the same. They're Muslims. But we pass judgments, and in the process of doing that, we split the energy and power of what combined Muslim energy should be. So this is the point I want to make. This seems to me that the world wants to heal, reconstruct, and this is what we should be party of, rather than to continue to talk about the terrible days before.
Mr. Nasser.
Thank you for your comments. Let me just highlight a couple of things Tan Sri asked me to point out, and who best to answer this and give you a perspective than the president himself. The reason I printed a speech here is to kind of give you a perspective. So let me quote from you. It says, America's strong bonds with Israel are well known. This bond is unbreakable. It is based on cultural and historical ties, and the recognition that the aspiration of Jewish homeland is rooted in a tragic history that cannot be denied. Then let me move on to the next points that he made. It says, on the other hand, it is also undeniable that the Palestinian people, Muslims and Christians, have suffered in pursuit of a homeland. For more than 60 years, they have endured the pain of dislocation. Many wait in refugee camps in West Bank, Gaza, and neighboring lands for a life of peace and security that they have never been able to lead. I believe it's also the point the president made that for decades then there has been a stalemate. Two peoples with legitimate aspirations, each with a painful history that makes compromise elusive. It's easy to point fingers, the president added, for the Palestinians to point fingers, the displacement brought upon them by Israel's founding, and for the Israelis to point to the constant hostility and attacks throughout its history from within its borders and beyond. But if we see this conflict only as one-sided or the other, then we will be blind to the truth. The only resolution for the aspiration of both sides is to be met through two states. The Israelis and the Palestinians live in each peace and security. So I believe this is the point that Tan Sri is making. Rather than pointing fingers and saying, this is the America's policy, this is not the responsibility of the United States of America. This is not the responsibility of the European Quartet. This is the responsibility of all of us to find a resolution to the Palestinian issue, Palestinian-Israeli issue. So I believe if we are to move forward, we must all collectively try to find a solution to this problem.
Yes, next question. Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Very good afternoon. My name is Zakaria Hashim. I'm a member of IAIS. I'm a professional in the construction and development sector of the industry. I'm a student of Islam because you will continue to be a student of Islam from the cradle to the grave. So I don't specialize in any particular philosophy. But I would like to comment and ask a few questions, Mr. Chairman. Is it okay? Okay, thank you. Firstly, I think the speakers have not touched on the core problem of this relationship between USA and the Muslim world. I think just now the brother mentioned about Shia and Sunnis. To me, it is not a core problem. The core problem is the prejudice and the understanding of Islam and its roots. I think this, we cannot deny the historical perspective. I know that I agree with Tan Sri, we should try to balance, but the fact still remains, historically, and it is on record, that Israel never exists as a nation. Palestine does exist. It's a fact of history. Israel was created by arm twisting, the Third World, by the powers after the Second World War. And these are facts of history which is very difficult for the Muslim people to forget. Having said that, I'm an optimist. I believe we have to move forward. But to move forward, you have to clear this prejudice first. And this prejudice towards Islam and the Muslim is still continuing to be there. I say that with conviction, a good example now, I mean, it really makes me cry that the Pakistani army are killing the Taliban. What they want is just a state to implement Sharia law. But this was denied to them. Now they are going for the head of the Taliban. Because why? He wants to set up a state which implements Sharia. This to me is the ignorance part of it, where we have to allow. If you allow the Israelis to have their own state, to have their own system, why do you slaughter the Muslims who wants to adopt Sharia? This to me is a core problem. And I see no reason. At one point, the Pakistani government has signed a peace treaty with the Taliban. They say, okay, you carry on, implement Sharia law. But the problem, of course, is a question of the depth of knowledge. And that relates to the tradition of knowledge in Islam. And secondly, you find that American policy now, or before, maybe not now, is to try to disengage and to destroy the tradition of knowledge in Islam through the madrasah. It is a madrasah that creates ulama in Islam. Even in Malaysia, it is a pondok system that creates great ulama, especially in Patani, for instance. And Patani is another example. It is a center of Islam, center of learning in this part of the world. But because of political intrigues, it is now left to be controlled by the Siamese government, now they call themselves Thais, and what happened to the Muslim in Patani. So this is the core problem. If this engagement between USA and the Muslim world, then one has to accept this basic issue of the tradition of knowledge in Islam, where madrasah must be there, and you have to allow the Muslim. If they want to implement Sharia, they want to be rigid in their belief, it is their right. As much as you allow secularism in Turkey, even the Turkey so-called Muslim government have a constitutional court that banned the Muslim from wearing a headscarf. And now, of course, you have in France. So these are the contradictions you find even within the Muslim world. I agree with Tan Sri Azali that Malaysia is the best model. I'm a consultant to IDB. I'm also affiliated to OIC through my organization. And it is accepted that Malaysia is a model to be followed. But we are now regressing in the sense we don't have enough capable people, I think, Tan Sri, even in diplomatic service, even among the ulamas, apart from the few that we have here, to be able to really assist in reducing this ignorance and to engage the USA with the Muslim world. Obama speaks very well in Cairo, but he was speaking to one sector of the ulama who might not represent. And we know the regime in Cairo, what Mubarak does to the Muslim Brotherhood, for instance. And we know what happened to Hamas, where the West wants democracy, they had a fair election, Hamas was voted into power, but what happens now? They slaughter Hamas. Because why they say, and they brand terrorist organization. And it bleeds me when they really destroyed Hamas. The spokesman for Israel said, oh, we are a member of the United Nations, they are terrorists, we have a right to destroy them. See, these are issues that cannot be erased overnight. These are core issues which we have to look into, Mr. Chairman. And I also agree with Professor Muhammad Bakar. The Jewish lobby is just too strong in America. I was in the United States 2 years ago. Even recently, Obama wants to appoint one of his people who's the Assistant Secretary General of the State Department. He was just mentioning that America is being managed by another country. And he was really, asked to resign, and they just condemned him, and he has to resign. The strength of the Jewish lobby is beyond logic in America. Nobody can talk about Israel, anything bad about Israel in America. And secondly, this is something for Nasir. There were a few TV stations. I was there. They even questioned, why must Muslims use the word Allah? See, the propaganda against Islam is so strong in America. And I was there. I listened. You must have a Muslim television to counter all these things. Probably you and your colleagues in America can do something for us to really engage effectively back to the core issue of knowledge. Finally, Mr. Chairman, I think one of the other disadvantages that you find that United States allow dual citizenship between America and Israel. And the people around Obama now, the head of chief of staff of the White House, his father was a terrorist in Israel that slaughtered a lot of Palestinians. And they say, well, we have our people in the White House. So you see the strength that of these people around Obama. So I wonder how Obama can really push forward this agenda, which I fully support. I have hope in him. I've been listening to him before he became president, during the Democratic Convention. He is capable, he is able, but the issue that I think Professor raised is that the people around him, will they allow him to move forward to engage the Muslim world effectively? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
You see, this is the thing. They put me on this side, Tansir. You did a good job of putting me on this side to defend, and then you take the good questions on that side.
I put them on the left. Put you on the right.
No, but look, let me just say this. To your point about Islam, as I've said this before, the war is not against Islam. Please, read my lips. The war is not against Islam. It's against those people, those extremists that use Islam that murder and slaughter innocent men, women, and children in mosques, in schools, in markets, in the name of Islam. That's not the Islam, sir, that I grew up with. That's not the Islam that you grew up with. That's not the Islam I want my children to grow up with. So I would suggest to you, let's look forward, let's move forward. Think about the opportunity that we have here as a Muslim world to engage a president who thinks for himself. Let me also highlight this point, that you say that all the people around him are the Jewish lobby. You must go back and look at the speeches that he wrote or gave during his election campaign. You must read his book. If you have any doubt in how he makes these decisions, you must look at the decisions that he's made, not just on the financial, economic environment, but in a number of other environments. He listens to advisors, but he makes the decision. Your point about the mistrust of Muslims in the US, you asked for a TV channel. You know, it's for people like myself. It's like people like yourself, like Tansri Razali, who need to stand up and talk about the fact that the Islam, the way we grow up with, is not the Islam. You talk about Sharia law and these people wanting to implement Sharia law in a remote part of Pakistan. Is this what the men, women of the Muslim world in Malaysia want? You want your women to be covered up? You want your women to be non-educated? This is not what we want, sir. This is not what we want. This is not what you want. This is not what I want. As an American Muslim and as an American, this is not what I want. I reject. So I think at that point, I would turn it over to the left side.
think it's okay. You want to say something? Please.
Yeah, I don't quite agree with Mr. Abbas.
That's why, Tan Sri, we're on the panel. We're having a discussion.
I have no problems whatsoever to have a community that are conservative Muslims who would ask whose women are covered up completely. I have no problem whatsoever. I think this is something that America has got to educate itself about. That as long as you have to allow people to be what they want to be. And we've not got a perfect situation in Malaysia. While we are constructive, there are people who insist on not, in some parts where I stay, in Kedah, for example, there are some truly conservative people. And they must have a right to live the way they want to live. I mean, in America, no business trying to get people to be all modern. It's not the way it should be.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Okay, please. Okay. Well, just to continue from Mr. Zakaria's elaboration of the relationship between the West and the Muslim world, vis-a-vis Talibanism and whatnot. While earlier on during the Cold War era, you do find that the US was able to rely on various kind of Muslim countries, monarchies, republicans, dictators, all because they were all united against communism. So the differences between them and the Muslim people, and the differences among Muslim countries also, were no hindrance to the United States, all because of their strategic value. So there was an appreciation of differences then. So I suppose that if the US were to adopt a similar stance in regards to the growth of Talibanism within, let's say, Afghanistan, or the growth of Sharia-oriented politics in Pakistan, the way they have been tolerating Islam in Saudi during the Cold War era, for example. If that is the case, the various Muslim countries, in their own ways, evolving Islamic states, to use the best of term probably, will subsist within the overall world system. I'm sure if they were allowed to have their way along that path to achieve their respective goals within their limits, they will not become enemies of the United States, I can assure you. The fact that they could become friends and allies during the Cold War era means just that. And if at all they are given the opportunity to pursue their Islamic idea of progress, I've been using this term often to show that they are along a different kind of continuum, heading towards their own Islamic goal, simply because some are still in the 15th century while living in the 21st century. There's no doubt about that. And they are armed with 21st century weapons where their mindset are still of the 18th century makeup. We have problems with them also. I'm not saying that we don't have problems. But if we were to give them the opportunity for this kind of Islamic art of improvisation with different countries within their own local context pursuing their respective goals, then we can have various kind of Muslim countries subsisting within the overall international political world. And if America is able to handle this, well, I'm sure it's going to benefit all of us all around. I can assure you. There is no reason for them to fight the United States anymore because they stand to benefit through their economic relationship, social relationship, and so on and so forth. And the fact that this happened before can happen again in the future, albeit in a new form. Thank you.
Okay. Next question, please. Can I go this side? Oh, okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Malik Bennett. I'm with the Petronas University of Technology, and I'm an American Muslim. I came here today, like many others, I think, expecting a debate about rhetoric, because it says on the sign rhetoric, so I expected that would be the main topic. And I feel the speakers didn't feel that was really a problem, but other things are the problem. I feel rhetoric is the problem, so I want to mention something about that. There's three particular terms that I'd like you to address. one of the terms you did address, although tangentially, and that was democracy. Several speakers noted that America approaches the world as a place of acceptable democracies, unacceptable democracies, and countries which have an acceptable lack of democracy, right? America accepts some countries that don't practice democracy. I think some of you noted that, which is interesting because they insist upon an acceptable democracy, yet they clearly accept certain countries that don't have democracy as being normative. This is one term, the word democracy. And my understanding is that President Obama's definition of democracy has something to do with consensus. His concept of democracy gravitates to the word consensus. And I want to ask about that. Does bombing civilian areas harmonize with the principle of consensus? I won't go on about that. The second term is dignity. And the challenge to the word dignity as a rhetorical device is the fact of torture, the existence of torture, which is not accounted for and is not prosecuted. If we're not prosecuting torture, we're not holding people accountable for that, can democracy stand? The third term is nonviolence. And there were shadows and references in President Obama's speeches about Martin Luther King and nonviolence. Yet, President Obama felt that the Israeli assault upon Gaza, killing 1,500 people, was a very acceptable solution to their problem. Also, in Iran, if 7 protesters were killed, that's unacceptable violence. But in these bombed civilian areas, I estimate about 10 people a day are killed. Day after day, week after week, month after month. And that's acceptable violence. So these 3 terms need to be addressed. If you address one of them, I'd be quite happy. I understand, and I can summarize the rhetoric in this way. America needs democracy, dignity, and nonviolence. Obama has come to guarantee that to America. Muslims need democracy, dignity, and nonviolence. They don't have it, and America is going to bring it to them. America will bring those things to the Muslims. Only problem is America has not done that. Thank you.
Want to respond? You don't have. Would you like to say something?
I think it's a bit unfortunate that this very word democracy has been so interpreted when it's supposed to provide good dividends for all. In the democratization process that is taking sway in many Muslim countries, we do find that the West in particular are zeroing on the so-called sought-after goals of their own. And so long as these various Muslim populace, having elected people of their own, are not able to reach that goal, then they are considered at variance with the cherished goal of a Western democracy. So that is the crux of the problem. Well, in some Muslim countries, for example in Indonesia, where there is greater liberalization, greater form of democratization taking place, if at all the various groups and factions there are able to come forward with their own rendering of their own interests, which are not necessarily in accord with Islamic aspirations, then probably they are going to be at peace with the West or the American in particular. But if it is going to be not at tangent with whatever they are doing and thinking, the way it happens in Algeria or in the case of the West Bank, for example, then they will consider those acts of democracies as deplorable, as abhorring. So I suppose
at the end of the day, it is their so-called goal which is more important than democracy. To them, democracy is just a means, and that means can only be tolerated if at all it could lead to the kind of goals that they have been cherishing. So this is part of my early argument. If you are able to accept differences, including different kinds of democracies, in view of their different situations in those various Muslim countries, then I think we should be able to have a better world, a more peaceful world. And this has always been my solution personally, i.e. that we have to appreciate those differences. And this is well taken care of within the context of Islamic teaching. Thank you.
My name is Ustaz Ismail Halim. I'm here presenting...
Closer.
I'm here representing Persatuan Bekas Mahasiswa Islam Timur Tengah, Middle Eastern Graduate Association. So, having heard 3 speakers, I have made a conclusion that 80% I agree with what you have said. But the question is, we have a political side and we have a historical side. If we are going to speak about historical side, about Palestinian, about problem with Arab, Muslim in the West, maybe Professor Muhammad, Brother Muhammad will confirm to me that as a historian he can use both sides. He can use history for his own benefit, I can use history for my own benefit. So I don't want to go to that level. For the politics, I think when I was young, I was in Cairo. Before Yasser Arafat, the Palestinian was calling for one state, only one state, Jew and Arab, Palestinian Arab, live together. So with time, they change. That's their own business, it's not me. The Jewish state, they insist on Dawla Yahudiyya, the Jewish state, that is to say, only for Jews. Here is a problem. Now we have come to the two-state solution. And it seemed to us, I'm not a very good politician, seemed to us the world has agreed to accept the two solutions. One state for Palestinian, one state for the Jewish. So my question to Brother Anis, which one do you support? Do you support the Jewish state, or do you support one state for the Arab and Jew, or do you support two-state solution? That's my first question. Second question, if you can say, being a Muslim American or American Muslim, you, of course, you can see that the Arab is the majority and big potential of economic benefit. Israel is a good friend. Some people said Israel is a 52 state of America. So for the Arab American or American Arab, do you think to side with the Arab is good, or to side with the Israel is better, or be just to Israel and be just to the Arab? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes. Can we try to be as brief as possible? The next, yes, please.
Hello. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum. My name is Batusha. I'm studying at the University of Malaya. As a student, I've very much welcomed President Obama's speech. I feel it's a new atmosphere for us Muslims. We're happy for a president of a great country to engage with Muslims. But when it's questioned about whether it's engagement or rhetoric, the only minus point that I could find in his speech was that he said that the relationship between United States and Israel is unbreakable. Well, I understand it maybe from the historical point of view, but I don't see how could you say it is unbreakable. Is it even if the Israel is building illegal settlements over there and it's going on, they are setting up conditions to accept Palestinian state, and they go on and saying you have to demilitarize, they go on with this. Are we still saying it is unbreakable? Even though they are doing this, they are not, they don't want to follow previous agreements, this and that. How could they be unbreakable? They must be, when we seek for truth, justice, and for all the Muslim world and the Israel, there must be a way to carry these things out. We understand that Holocaust happened to the Jewish people. We are sorry for that, but it's not the Palestinians who did that. We didn't do it to them. The Europeans did it, but it happens now, the Palestinians are suffering. So, how could it be unbreakable if they are doing more, and I mean, with the attacks on Gaza, white phosphorus, well, you all know it. Thank you. That is just my point of view.
Thank you. Next please, yes.
Assalamu alaikum. I am a visitor from Bangladesh. I am a law professor at the Dhaka University, Bangladesh. I was about to finish my manuscript on US-Muslim relations. Then I found that I am not writing very well. So I decided I should go outside from country and see how Muslims are thinking about US policies and how other people are reflecting on the US policies towards Muslim countries. So I was very lucky to be here today. So for me, I understand from the title that the rhetoric has been taken as a negative connotation of the engagement, meaning the maybe disengagement. I can tell you my personal feeling about President Obama's stand about the Muslim world and Muslim issues. If you take it as a rhetoric, I would say he's doing excellent in terms of rhetoric. Now, as a whole, I don't take rhetoric as a negative connotation. I think rhetoric sometimes can play a very important role to engage people, those who have serious mistrust. So taking rhetoric as a positive connotation, then disengagement also might be negative. Many engagements bring negative results. So sometimes disengagement are not too bad. Sometimes disengagement also good, just to give time to healing the process or to allow people to come with appropriate solutions or to come up with more options. Personally, I am looking for good questions rather than good answers. So I think I got some of good questions here. They goes very deep, but I don't really expect that somebody would give a very thorough and conclusive answer to those questions. So I am rather happy with the discussion, what is going on as an intellectual. As an activist in human rights areas, it is very difficult to be happy with either side, with both sides. There is so many grievances we can bring about the disengagement of US policies or our Muslim rulers' attitude towards the Muslim as well as towards the West or towards human rights as a whole. Limitations of individuals are becoming very great vis-a-vis the possibility of collective or institutions to play a bigger role. For example, the International Institute of Advanced and Islamic Studies, as an institution, can play enormous role to do many things. But how an individual is great, he might not succeed to bring all the objectives of this institution into fruition. So President Obama as an individual might have many constraints, but what I feel encouraged by his speeches, that he is inviting us to come forward. That is very, very good. But now we should not be maybe jumping on the one hand, on the other hand we should not be too lazy to respond. So let us see how as a Muslim intellectuals and academia we can play a positive role. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Prof.
Thank you. My name is Osman Baka. I'm here at IAIS. Okay. I like to refer to two recent opinion polls. One which says that more and more Israelis perceive Obama as both pro-Islam and pro-Palestinian. The second opinion poll is that more and more Americans, or rather percentage of Americans, giving unqualified support to Israel have come down. And to add to that, a few days ago, a Jewish professor at Georgetown, Washington, D.C., Georgetown University, asked me, will the growing number of Muslims in the United States is going to mean less support for Israel? Can the panelists interpret these facts with reference to the topic of our discussion today? What do they mean in terms of the scenario of the near future? And the other one is just to Tan Sri Razali. You speak of opportunities that the Muslim world should not lose. The opportunities generated by the Obama overture, starting from his inaugural speech, the speech in Turkey and in Cairo. There are many, apart from the Israeli-Palestinian issue, can you name one or two other issues which Muslim world should really focus in trying to respond to the Obama speech? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, too many is proliferating.
More questions.
More questions. Very, very short, please. Post your questions, sit down. Thank you.
Okay, I'm Puya from University of Malaya. In terms of freedom and democracy that America accused many Islamic countries, the question, very brief question, that still in America and Western countries, researchers are not allowed to research on Holocaust. If they are working on a Holocaust and the result is against with American and Western policy, the researcher is targeted. Is it what kind of freedom and democracy that America wants for the other countries? Still in America and Western countries, we don't have freedom of researchers and democracy. The other question that I want to ask from Mr. Nasser is the Obama's answer to President Ahmadinejad's letter. As you know, President Ahmadinejad sent a letter to President Obama, but still we didn't receive any answer from Obama. Thank you very much.
Thank you. One more? Yes, please.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Fairuz. My question is very simple. For me, the rhetoric has been delivered. Obama has engaged the Muslim world. Now what's next? What's next can Obama administration do to eradicate all the decades of mistrust and distrust from the Muslim world against the United States? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. 1 minute. Yes, please.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Muhammad. I'm a student from UM. Can the panels briefly explain about the Zionist agenda and their relation with US foreign policy? Thank you.
Can you repeat again?
Can the panels explain about the Zionist agenda?
Zionist agenda, okay.
And their relation
Zionist
with
agenda, yes.
US foreign policy.
And influence on US foreign policy.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, I think that's it. Maybe I start with Prof.
Well, thank you, Tan Sri. Well, it is pretty well known that this is in regards to the last question. It is pretty well known that in the West, especially, the influence of Zionism is very pervasive to the extent that now
we have the 11th commandment, thou shalt not question the Holocaust. So there were a few British scholars or historians who have written books to debunk some of the earlier findings. They were taken to court, and at least one of them was brought to trial and imprisoned in one of these Western European countries. At the same time, we do know that in spite of their number, which is comparatively smaller in relation to the Muslims in the United States, they are more united. And this is in regards to the other question, why the Muslims, in spite of their number in the US, are not able to have a similar impact on US foreign policy process. They are to be found all over the United States. There is at least a major mosque in every of the US states. And in spite of the number, their presence is not a formidable one in terms of their influence on US foreign policy. In spite of the money they carry or they can bring to bear on their relationship with the US decision makers and so on. That is the problem faced by the Muslims themselves, and it is for the Muslims in the United States in particular and the Muslims elsewhere to answer why, in spite of their number, in spite of their affluence, they are not able to come up with a concerted action the way the Jews have been doing in the United States. Well, some time ago, I remember there was this argument, in spite of something negative about the Jew, when they say that if you have 10 Jews, you have 11 opinions, they say, to show that they too can be in this area. But otherwise, as Gladstone, the British Prime Minister, once said, Jews are like steel. The harder they hit them, the better steel they become. That is one version. And probably because of cross-fertilization, they have been going across all sorts of countries, imbibing all sorts of cultures, siphoning all sorts of civilization. And thirdly, probably the lesser mortals among them simply die away, so leaving the better ones. Or probably because of the conspirational nature in them, which is part of the additional chip in them, in their life, which allows them to advance their cause. I'm not too sure which, but at the very least, it is a criticism of the numerical slang of the Muslim. In spite of having the number, they cannot even come near the Jews when it comes to planning, coordinating, cooperating among themselves. And thirdly, I would like also to mention something about Obama also here. While the rhetoric speaks volumes about the new approach of Obama, and this is well validated by some of the speakers and by those from the floor, but we must bear in mind, in a democracy like the US, a man like Obama could become what he is only after he has been able to somehow champion the cause of the majority, the Western, or the WAPs as we call it, Western Anglo-Saxons Protestant, the American values. All along, throughout American history, all the presidents more or less are the embodiment of the American values. And that American values more or less are the same throughout history. So if Obama were to represent something else in view of the rhetorics, then he will be opposed. He will be rejected by the American people, by the Jews who have been equally supportive of the earlier president, and probably by the Western countries who are enamored of this Judeo-Christian tradition, who are also supportive of America, who are having special relationship with the United States, especially during the Cold War and also during the post-Cold War era. This is the problem. We have forgotten this fact. We may be talking a lot about Obama being a man of change and being changed himself, little knowing that he cannot be what he is now. He cannot arrive at where he is now if he doesn't represent those values. So one has to be very critical about that. I'm not saying that he is not sincere. He might be sincere. I'm not saying that he is not going to go for some kind of ground-breaking kind of policy. I'm not saying no to that also. But what I'm saying is that the system which embodies this value is stronger, is larger than Obama as a personality. Thank you.
The professor raised very interesting points. We don't have the time to, maybe we should have another discussion on this one. But about questions related to the role of the Muslims. I mean, obviously, we have done very badly as a group, as a power group in the world, despite our money and our wealth and our strategic positions and all that. We have done very badly. Surely there's a lot more that can be done. And we are really letting our own community down, the Ummah down and all that. I mean, there's no question of it. How can you tolerate what is going on in Cairo? How can one tolerate all the other places where people are being utilized as chattel, as it were? So I'm sorry, there is no way that I can accept this situation. I think the leaders of the Muslims primarily should be made accountable for all things. There was a hope in Syria, and Syria now there's a Assad Jr., and it's the same thing over and over again. You know, and we've got to change it. If you want to be able to matter in the world, you have to change it. And we can matter in the world by looking at areas where we can make an entry point. I've talked about Islamic banking. I talk about featuring some responsible country being strong enough, influential enough to be able to sit in the group of 20 or even in the Security Council to make these points. Not necessarily only on behalf of the Muslims, but representing, as it were, informally a huge swath of humanity. This we have to do. You know, finally, one very interesting question I want to pose to Mr. Abbasi. A speaker just now mentioned, what are you, maybe you can stand on your Fifth Amendment or whatever, not answer this question, but do you have the same pool as we in Malaysia have, being a Muslim? Are you aware of the Ummah outside the borders of the United States? I don't quite agree with what Professor said about US values being different from other values. So I'm trying to hope that obviously the Muslims have not been able to be influential on the issues that count to the Muslim world. I mean, I stayed in New York for 10 years, and one of the most distressing things to see is to see the inability of Muslims, Americans, to make points important to the other Muslims that are working in the UN and all that. I mean, if you look at the UN holidays, for example, there is only one day given for Eid, and all the other holidays. I mean, but we are completely unable to make the point as ordinary Muslims or as Muslim countries. So how does it matter to you? I've said this with great respect.
Yeah, no, that's what, look, I mean, the whole point of discussion here, is to continue to look at what are the differences and trying to I don't think it's on. They've cut me off. My time is up. You guys all took too many questions. It's 5:05. Is this on?
Yes, it's on.
Oh,
It's on.
I think maybe they've switched it off because they don't want me to speak anymore. But no, look, I think, you know, having been raised in the U.S. as a Muslim, having worked outside of the United States as a Muslim, working in Middle East, you ask me for my personal opinion, I can assure you I'm trying. What they've tried to, you ask me for my personal opinion, and I can only tell you that we always look at, I mean, just look at the questions that we get from the audience. You know, you talk about Sharia law. What is Sharia law? We can have another debate on Sharia law for, you know, for another 2 hours. We can have another speech on what is nonviolence, what's democracy. You know, you look at what is, the question on the floor was, what is the Zionist policy and where are they going with this? Is this what we as Muslims want to talk about? Whereas, you know, you want to ask the question, what influence do we have in the U.S.? Well, if we're caught up in you know, thinking that these are theories, these are conspiracy theories, I respectfully tell you that I think we do not have the consensus to stand up and make a difference in this world. So, you know, I apologize that the time's run out, but all I can tell you, you know, to some of the people that asked the questions, the president, you know, said, yes, the bond with Israel is unbreakable. But at the same time, in that same speech, and I encourage all of you to read it if you have not, he said that the United States does not accept the legitimacy of continued Israeli settlements. He said that. I mean, this is the first president of the United States, including President Bush's father, who was also the president, who also said the illegal settlements must stop. So, unfortunately, you know, the time's run out. I can see everybody's patience running out, but I'd be happy to take question and answers and try to answer some of your questions, perhaps at a later discussion. I don't know. Tansri, it's up to you.
No, if you wish for some more time, please go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to try to answer some of the questions. You know, the gentleman asked for two-state solution. You know, I think, you know, we must come to a understanding. Israel is not going to go away. You know, no matter how many times we close our eyes, it's not going to go away. So when is it that we, as the Muslim world, are going to stand up and recognize we have to find a solution to deal with it? You know, so to answer your question, sir, I didn't catch your name. The answer is there has to be a two-state solution. You know, you talk about, I think I answered the question about the unbreakable ties with Israel by saying the president has already highlighted that there will be a stop to the illegal settlements with Israel. What were some of the other questions now? You know, I wrote down as much as I could, but I also wanted to listen, so I think I will just stop at that, but let me just highlight the point. This is the engagement that we require. This is up to, it is up to us. It's not just the position of the United States of America. It's the responsibility of other Muslim countries like Malaysia, like Indonesia, like Saudi Arabia, like Egypt, and like Turkey to stand up and deal with the issues that we have at hand. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Can I just, you know, as the chair, make some, perhaps pull the strings together and make some concluding remarks very quickly. I think, like Tan Sri Razali began, maybe it's too early to tell. We need maybe 6 months more, a year more, in order to really say a bit more substantively whether it is rhetoric or more than rhetoric. But I think the general sense of the people on the panel, though there may be different degrees, varying degrees, is that it is not just rhetoric. It is more than that. That Obama really wants to make a difference, to do something to improve the situation. I think after Bush, I think any president, I suppose, you know, would be moving in a direction that improves the situation, and I believe Obama does intend to improve the situation. The question is, how far does Obama want to go? And whether what Obama has said should be done, and he has not been very exhaustive on what should be done, will really answer the problems. Will Obama's approach, what he has said so far, for instance, he says stop building new settlements. Is that the only issue? So, but that's another story. You know, whether the Obama approach, the Obama agenda for the Palestinian problem, which I think is the fundamental problem that will, you know, bedevil U.S. relations with the Muslim world, whether that will be sufficient. But having said that, my own sense is that they believe Obama does want to make a difference, but that there are enormous challenges that stand in the way of Obama. And among these challenges, perhaps the greatest are at home. Perhaps the clearest voice The loudest voice is Obama's, and very few other voices are speaking like Obama. And there are some of the groups have been mentioned by Professor Mohammed. I don't have to mention them, the conservatives, the Christian right, and the neoconservatives. I believe also in the administration. I mean, they are welcome to their own views. So some in the administration. And on the Hill, we know Newt Gingrich, etc. They all have, I mean, it's a democracy, they have different views, different approaches. But I believe Obama's greatest challenge will be at home. But overseas also, he has great challenges. The first great challenge is a rather very, very rightist, to put it mildly. Yeah? We'll use other words for if it's Palestine, but for Israel, it's a very rightist government there, which is Netanyahu, who didn't even want to recognize Palestine. But now, and this is where I say Obama really does want to make a difference, he has pressed Netanyahu to recognize Palestine, and Netanyahu has gone to some extent, not completely, to recognize Palestine. So you have Israel, you have the Israeli lobby in the United States, one cannot, you know, IPAC and all that, one cannot go away from there. And then you have the objective situation. You have Palestine, which is such a difficult problem. We have Iraq, we have Iran, we have Pakistan. So all these things are all burning out there, and it's quite difficult for an American president to taking into account all the realities at home, like any good president, leader, CEO of a country has to, at the same time to handle all these things outside. So I think he has all these challenges. He wants to do something. He has these challenges. But being here, I mean, as Tan Sri Razali said, what do we do? I think on the Muslim world, some Muslims, I think, clutch at straws. This is an opportunity, and we must make the most of it. So as far as possible, strengthen the environment for Obama to work in, to achieve his objectives, make it as conducive as possible. And one of the ways of doing this is, in fact, something which we have not mentioned. In Obama's speech, he talks about partnership with the Muslim world on socio-economic issues, on scholarships, on a volunteer organization force that he's going to, you know, for assistance, aid, etc., that he is establishing in the United States to partner with similar volunteers in the Muslim world to work together for human development. He also talks about, you know, assistance, science and technology, and he talks about a summit that's going to be held later this year. I think we must give Obama a break, give him a chance, and engage, welcome, and respond. We must respond. What is our response to all these initiatives that Obama says he wants to take? We should seize upon them, meet them halfway. And at the same time, to remain very, very pragmatic and rooted to the core issues. And here is where mindsets, strategic approaches, etc. come in. It's going to be very, very difficult. But I think we should make the most of what we can without losing sight of the core issues that separate the United States and the Muslim world. Can I invite you to join me in congratulating the panel for an excellent event?